7 ranks separate the lowest Imperial officer from the Emperor himself. Each promotion brought more power, more authority, and greater danger. Millions of soldiers, pilots, and crews served beneath a command structure that stretched from a single bridge station to entire regions of space. It was not designed to win wars efficiently, it was designed to keep everyone afraid of the one above him. Across films, televisions, novels, comics, and reference guides in both canon and legends, this is the complete hierarchy of Imperial command, from expendable cadets to the architects of superweapons, and at every level, the price of failure was the same. Every Imperial officer started here, and most of them died here. The Imperial Academy system was the sole gateway into the officer corps, and at this level, no one had authority, protection, or any value beyond what the next training cycle could replace. Every officer began as a cadet at one of the Imperial Academies. As Claudia Gray's canon novel Lost Stars depicted in detail, the program recruited cadets from across the galaxy and subjected them to years of intensive preparation. Cadets competed against each other for commissions, studied tactics, navigation, fleet operations, and Imperial doctrine. Instructors weeded out the weak, rewarded the ruthless, and ensured that only those willing to place the new order above all else received a commission. The cadets who survived this process emerged as products of the machine, shaped from their earliest days to obey without question. The Empire operated academies on dozens of worlds. As Star Wars Rebels showed, even the Outer Rim world of Lothal had its own Imperial Academy, feeding cadets into the military pipeline. Solo, a Star Wars story, followed Han Solo entering Imperial service through a recruitment post on Corellia, showing that the system cast a wide net. Solo trained as a flight cadet before being expelled for defying orders and reassigned to infantry in the mudfields of Mimban. His story illustrated a simple truth about the junior officer tier. The machine did not invest in individuals, it consumed them. Those who did not conform were discarded without ceremony. For every Han Solo who walked away, 1,000 other cadets stayed in line and filled the ranks without complaint. With this, graduates entered the fleet as the Empire's lowest tier of authority, and the system made sure they knew it. A junior lieutenant aboard a Star Destroyer ran a sensor station or a communications bank, while a garrison lieutenant on a backwater world supervised a platoon of stormtroopers. Neither had any input on strategy, tactics, or resource decisions. As Lost Stars documented through the early careers of Sienna Ree and Thane Kyrell, these graduates followed orders, filed reports, and waited for promotion. Their authority extended no further than the teams directly beneath them. They did not choose their assignments, did not question their superiors, and did not expect explanations. The posting could be a warship patrolling the core worlds, or an outpost on a planet most crew members cannot find on a star chart. Either way, the lieutenant went where the command structure told him and did what it required. In the Legends continuity, the Imperial sourcebook by West End Games outlined the same framework, confirming that low-ranking personnel were interchangeable parts in a machine designed to function regardless of which individuals filled the positions. The colored squares on an Imperial chest plaque were the visual ranking system, and everyone in this fleet could read another person's rank at a glance. At this tier, the plaque was small and simple, immediately making its wearer as low ranking. Failures here were handled quietly. Those who underperformed were transferred to worse postings, demoted to enlisted status, or simply removed from the roster. The lowest rung existed to be used, and it was used without hesitation or concern for who filled the uniform next. And surviving the junior ranks was only the first test. The real challenge came when the Empire handed an officer a warship and told him it was his to lose. A Star Destroyer captain held the lives of nearly 47,000 personnel in his hands, and Darth Vader held the captain's life in his. The Imperial-class Star Destroyer was the backbone of the Imperial Navy, and commanding one meant that a single officer's name was attached to every outcome aboard. At 1,600 meters long, carrying a crew of over 37,000 along with a stormtrooper force of nearly 10,000, one vessel of this class was a floating city. It could blockade a planet, deploy a full ground assault force, and engage enemy fleets on its own. As shown across the original trilogy and detailed in the Legends reference book The Essential Guide to Warfare by Jason Fry and Paul R. Urquhart, the Star Destroyer was the Empire's instrument of control. That officer managed the flight crews, the gunnery teams, the hangar operations, the stormtrooper detachments, and every weapon system aboard, from turbo laser batteries, the tractor beam projectors, and when something went wrong, the consequences came without warning. Captain Nita of the Star Destroyer Avenger learned this firsthand. As The Empire Strikes Back depicted, Nita participated in the pursuit of the Millennium Falcon after the Battle of Hoth. The Falcon attached itself to the hull of Nita's own Star Destroyer, vanishing from the sensors entirely. Nita lost the target and traveled to the Super Star Destroyer Executor to personally apologize to Darth Vader. Vader accepted his apology, and Nita fell dead on the bridge floor, killed by a force choke. 2 Navy troopers carried his body away while the fleet continued its pursuit. No one on the bridge said a word. Nita's entire career, his command, his years of service, all of it ended because he lost track of one small freighter. An officer who failed at this level did not receive a reprimand. He was removed. This was where personal risk truly began, and every officer at this rank understood it. Yet, in the Legends continuity, one captain proved that survival at this rank was not only possible, it was valuable. Captain Gilad Pellaeon served as commanding officer of the Star Destroyer Chimera under Grand Admiral Thrawn. As told across Timothy Zahn's Legends trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command, Pellaeon was steady, dependable, and effective. Thrawn valued him not for brilliance, but for reliability, and Pellaeon delivered exactly that. He executed plans he did not always understand, followed orders he sometimes disagreed with, and kept the Chimera running at peak performance through some of the most complex campaigns the Imperial Navy had ever attempted. Where other officers crumbled under the pressure of serving a demanding superior, Pellaeon adapted and endured. When Thrawn's campaign ended with his death at the Battle of Bilbringi, it was Pellaeon who called the retreat and held the fleet together. Pellaeon went on to lead the Imperial Remnant for decades, eventually becoming Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet. Still, a captain only controlled one warship. The officers above them controlled entire fleets, and at that level, the stakes were no longer one crew. They were entire campaigns. Admiral Ozell brought Death Squadron out of Lightspeed too close to the Hoth system. It was the last mistake he ever made. At this rank, mistakes did not cost one ship, they cost entire campaigns. As The Empire Strikes Back depicted, Admiral Kendall Ozell commanded Death Squadron, Darth Vader's personal fleet, from the bridge of the Super Star Destroyer Executor. When Imperial probe droids detected signs of rebel activity on Hoth, Ozell dismissed the data as unimportant. Vader overruled him and ordered the Armada to the system. Ozell then pulled out of hyperspace too close to Hoth, alerting the Rebel Alliance and giving them time to raise their planetary shield. Vader's response was immediate. He killed Ozell through the Force from across the Executor and promoted Captain Firmus Piet to Admiral on the spot. Everyone on the command deck watched Ozell die and Piet take his place in the same moment. No ceremony, no transition of authority. Vader simply decided, and the fleet obeyed. Piet inherited the most powerful naval force in the Empire and served Vader through the remainder of the Hoth campaign, the pursuit of the Millennium Falcon, and the trap at Cloud City. He returned in Return of the Jedi, commanding Death Squadron at the Battle of Endor, cautious, skilled, and visibly terrified of the man above him. In the battle's final moments, a crippled Rebel A-Wing starfighter crashed into the Executor's bridge, sending the massive warship plunging into the second Death Star. No other senior commander shown on screen had survived under Vader longer. Yet, Piet's death proved that survival and safety were never the same thing in the Imperial Navy. In the Legends continuity, The Essential Guide to Warfare detailed the scale of an Admiral's responsibility. A full sector group could contain 24 Star Destroyers and thousands of starfighters. The Admirals who thrived understood that moving a fleet across multiple star systems was as much about planning and supply as it was about firepower. General Maximilian Veers led the AT-AT assault on the rebel base on Hoth. As the Empire Strikes Back showed, the attack force advanced through the rebel defensive line and shrugged off fire from infantry positions and snowspeeders. Veers targeted the power generator himself from inside the cockpit of his lead walker, and the explosion brought the shield down. The assault was one of the few Imperial military operations shown on screen that succeeded entirely according to plan, and Veers was the officer who delivered that result. Where admirals commanded from the bridge, generals like Veers commanded from the front. In the canon series Rebels, Admiral Cassius Constantine served under Grand Admiral Thrawn and resented Thrawn's authority at every turn. During the Battle of Atollon, covered in the Rebels Season 3 finale 0 Hour, Constantine broke formation against Thrawn's explicit orders, attempting to take out Commander Sato's command ship personally. Sato turned his damaged ship into a battering ram and destroyed Constantine's cruiser in a collision that killed them both. Constantine's death was entirely self-inflicted. His ego overrode his training, and the fleet lost a capital ship because of it. The admirals and generals fought the Empire's wars, but another arm watched the people fighting those wars, and no officer could challenge it. The Imperial Security Bureau did not need a fleet, it only needed a file, and it had a file on every officer in the Empire. At every previous level, officers fought the Empire's enemies. At this level, the enemy was the Empire's own officers. The ISB was the Empire's internal security and loyalty enforcement arm, operating under Compnor, the Commission for the Preservation of the New Order, a civilian political body devoted to enforcing Imperial loyalty throughout the government. Agents monitored compliance across every branch of the Imperial military, tracked dissent galaxy-wide, and launched reviews that could end a career overnight. Officers could be reassigned, arrested, or simply disappeared. As the canon series Andor depicted, the ISB operated out of a centralized hub on Coruscant where supervisors competed against each other for credit. The Bureau's reach extended to the highest levels of Imperial command. During the Clone Wars, as the canon series depicted, Wolf Yularen had served as an admiral in the Republic Navy, working alongside Jedi generals during the war. After the Empire's formation, he resigned his commission, transferred into the ISB, and rose to the rank of colonel. By the time of A New Hope, he sat at the Death Star conference table among the Empire's most powerful military leaders. A former admiral had willingly left the Navy for the ISB, and the Bureau had placed him among the very officers that it was tasked with watching. With this, the ISB's field agents carried an authority that cut through normal military ranks, and no commanding officer could refuse them. Agent Alexander Kallus served as a recurring ISB presence in the canon series Rebels. Assigned to hunting the rebel cell operating out of Lothal, known as the Spectres, Kallus had the power to take over Imperial military resources, direct stormtrooper deployments, and operate independently of local naval commanders. As Rebels illustrated over its first 3 seasons, an ISB agent could override military officers who technically outranked him because the Bureau answered to a political structure, not a military one. The hunt took him through multiple systems where he coordinated with Inquisitors and directed missions that no regular officer could have authorized on his own. Yet, over time, Kallus defected to the rebellion after witnessing repeated Imperial violence against civilians and forming an unlikely bond with a rebel fighter he had once hunted. The very system designed to catch traitors had produced one of its own. In the Legends continuity, the spy network reached even greater heights of influence. Isan Isard, known by the nickname Iceheart, rose to lead Imperial intelligence, a separate branch from the ISB. As documented in Michael A. Stackpole's X-Wing novel series, Isard took control of Coruscant itself after the Emperor's death and used a weaponized virus targeting non-human species to weaken the New Republic's hold on the Imperial capital. Without Palpatine above her, Isard became a force of her own, wielding fear and ruthlessness to maintain her grip on the galaxy's most important world. She answered to no one and destroyed anyone who threatened her position. Her career showed what happened when the Watchers were no longer kept in check by the Emperor. The ISB made sure the Empire's own people fought correctly. At the next level, the political and military chains finally converged. They were the Moffs. A Moff did not command a fleet. A Moff demanded a sector. Every ship, every soldier, every tax credit, every civilian life within it answered to one title: At this rank, one title carried every form of Imperial authority, military, political, and economic, over an entire sector. The Moff system was the Empire's method for tightening control over the galaxy. Under the Republic, sectors had been represented by elected senators, but under the Empire, Palpatine replaced them with military governors, appointed to oversee each region alongside the still functioning Imperial Senate. As James Luceno's canon novel Tarkin outlined, the Moff system removed the gap between military and civilian authority entirely. A Moff did not negotiate with local governments or answer to planetary councils. A Moff simply commanded. Trade disputes, criminal enforcement, military deployment, and taxation all fell under a single office, and the scope of that command was staggering, because a sector could contain thousands of inhabited star systems and billions of people. One governor held more direct power than most Republic senators had ever wielded, and answered to no one. The dissolution of the Imperial Senate removed the last check on that authority. As Grand Moff Tarkin announced in A New Hope, the Empire had dissolved the Senate permanently, and the remaining duties were transferred to regional governors. The change meant that the Moffs were now the only ruling body between the Emperor and the civilian populations of the galaxy. A governor's word was law within his territory, and he oversaw fleets, armies, garrisons, trade routes, and every aspect of daily life for those living under him. He could raise taxes, force entire populations into labor, restrict trade, or shut down industries with a single order. In the Legends continuity, the Imperial Sourcebook and the Essential Guide to Warfare documented the structure in full. Each one controlled warships, ground forces, and planetary defense networks, commanding enormous military and political dominance over their regions. The catch was competition. Palpatine deliberately encouraged rivalry between Moffs, keeping them focused on outperforming each other rather than building independent strongholds. Those who expanded their holdings earned favor, while those who lost ground faced consequences that ranged from reassignment to execution. The system rewarded aggression and punished weakness, ensuring that no Moff ever felt secure enough to stop. And the pressure from above was constant, because even the Moffs lived in fear of those they served. Moff Tion Jerjerrod oversaw the construction of the second Death Star above the forest moon of Endor. As Return of the Jedi depicted, Darth Vader personally visited Jerjerrod to inform him that the construction timetable had to be accelerated. Jerjerrod's visible fear at the news that the Emperor himself was coming captured the reality of command at the Moff level. Even an officer governing one of the Empire's most critical military projects lived under the constant pressure of being found lacking. Jerjerrod commanded tens of thousands of workers and troops, control one of the most devastating weapons ever built, and none of it protected him from the displeasure of his superiors. The project was behind schedule, the Emperor was on his way, and Jerjerrod was the man who would answer for every delay. Vader's visit was not a courtesy, it was a warning, and Jerjerrod understood exactly what would follow if the schedule slipped again. At the Moff level, the weight of command could crush a commander long before any enemy arrived. The Moff system was built for control, not for brilliance. Above them stood a rank reserved for brilliance, and the most brilliant of them all was not even human. The Empire promoted thousands of officers. It created only a handful of Grand Admirals, and one of them changed everything. At every previous level, the system demanded obedience, control, and fear. At this level, the Empire rewarded genius. In the Legends continuity, the Emperor created the rank of Grand Admiral and appointed 12 officers to hold it. As first introduced in Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire, and expanded in Legends reference material including the Essential Guide to Warfare, the 12 Grand Admirals formed an elite tier of the Empire's top naval strategists. Each wore a distinctive white uniform that set them apart from the standard gray and black of the Imperial Officer Corps. The position existed above all admirals and regional commanders, answerable only to the Emperor and his closest political allies. Grand Admirals could override any Moff, commandeer any fleet, and take control of any operation they deemed necessary. In canon, the title works similarly as an exceptional appointment, with Thrawn being the most well-known officer to hold it. Mithra Nuruodo, known to the galaxy as Thrawn, was the only non-human to hold the rank of Grand Admiral. The Empire was an aggressively human-focused institution where aliens were pushed aside, enslaved, or blocked from military careers entirely. Thrawn was a chiss from the unknown regions, a species most Imperial officers had never even heard of. His rise to Grand Admiral, despite the Empire's own beliefs, came down to one thing: his results were too impressive to deny. In a system that valued loyalty and species purity above all else, Thrawn's tactical genius forced the Emperor to make an exception that no other alien officer had ever earned. Thrawn accepted his place, knowing that those around him despised his presence, and he used their contempt as another data point in his analysis of Imperial culture. In Legends, Thrawn nearly toppled the New Republic, and in canon, his genius reshaped the Empire's war against the Rebellion. As Zan's Legends trilogy depicted, Thrawn took command of the Imperial Remnant roughly 5 years after the Battle of Endor. From the Bridge of the Chimera, Thrawn launched a campaign against the New Republic that exploited internal divisions, stretched enemy supply lines, and turned captured intelligence into devastating tactical advantages. His signature method was art analysis, studying the art, music, and cultural works of species and civilizations to identify mental patterns and strategic tendencies. The Grand Admiral did not simply outfight his enemies, he understood them before the first shot was fired, predicting where commanders would break and which fractures he could exploit to divide their alliances. His war brought the New Republic to the edge of collapse before his killing by his own Noghri bodyguard ended it. Rook had learned that the Empire had deliberately poisoned his home world to keep his people enslaved. Thrawn's death proved that even a genius could not protect an officer from the consequences of the Empire's own cruelty. In canon, Timothy Zahn's 2017 novel Thrawn traced the Chiss officer's rise through the Imperial ranks from an outsider with no connections to the holder of the Navy's highest command title. The novel revealed that Thrawn's appointment was controversial and that rivals questioned the Emperor's judgment at every stage. Yet every promotion he received proved Palpatine right, and Thrawn delivered victory after victory. The canon series Rebels placed Thrawn against the Lothal Rebel cell, where his careful, patient approach nearly destroyed the rebellion's operations in the Outer Rim. Thrawn dismantled the operation piece by piece, closing every escape route before his opponents realized they were trapped. He was defeated at the Battle of Lothal not by a superior tactician, but by the Force. When the Purrgil, massive hyperspace-traveling creatures called by the Jedi Ezra Bridger, grabbed Thrawn's Star Destroyer and carried it into the unknown. No fleet, no general, and no rival strategist had managed to outthink him. It took the Force itself to remove Thrawn from the board. Grand Admirals, for all their genius, still answered to those above them, and the most powerful of those men built the weapon that destroyed an entire world. Grand Moff Tarkin stood on the bridge of the Death Star, a weapon that could destroy worlds. Even he knew the distance between power and death had never been thinner. At this level, officers did not operate within the Empire's systems, they built them. The Grand Moff rank was created specifically for Will of Tarkin. As James Luceno's canon novel Tarkin established, Tarkin was one of Palpatine's earliest and most trusted military allies. He had served as a Republic officer during the Clone Wars and was initially appointed Moff of the Greater Seswena sector at the Empire's formation. Roughly 5 years later, Palpatine elevated Tarkin to Grand Moff and placed him over Sector Outer, a territory that combined multiple sectors into one command. Tarkin also helped oversee the Death Star project from its earliest stages. His command was second only to the Emperor and Darth Vader, and he wielded it with a certainty that few officers in the Empire could match. Tarkin's vision shaped how the Empire controlled the galaxy. The Tarkin Doctrine was the core idea behind the Empire's military strategy. As Tarkin declared aboard the Death Star in A New Hope, fear of the battle station alone would keep the local systems in line. This philosophy held that the Empire should rule through the threat of overwhelming force rather than through the constant use of that force. The Death Star was the physical expression of that idea, a station so powerful that its mere existence would prevent rebellion. It worked for a brief, terrible moment. Tarkin destroyed Alderaan to prove the point, killing billions in an instant. It was the single most destructive act any Imperial officer ever ordered, and Tarkin gave the command without hesitation. He died hours later when the rebellion exploited the station's thermal exhaust port and brought it down with Tarkin still aboard. The man who believed fear was the ultimate weapon was killed by the very rebellion his weapon was supposed to prevent. And Tarkin was not the only officer at this level. The competition for the Emperor's favor at this tier was as deadly as any battlefield. Director Orson Krennic, as depicted in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and expanded upon in Luciano's Catalyst, a Rogue One novel, was the driving force behind the Death Star at the engineering level. He had spent decades building the Death Star from the ground up, overseeing every stage of its construction. Tarkin moved to take control of the finished project, stripping Krennic of the work he had devoted his career to building. Krennic died on the surface of Scarif when Tarkin ordered the Death Star to fire on the Imperial base, choosing to destroy stolen plans and a rival in the same shot. Meanwhile, General Taggy sat at the Death Star conference table in A New Hope and warned that the rebellion posed a genuine military threat, yet his colleagues dismissed him. In canon, as the Marvel Darth Vader comic series by Kieron Gillen illustrated, the Empire appointed Taggy as Grand General after the station's destruction. Palpatine's decision was precise. Taggy had been right about the Death Star's vulnerability, and the Emperor rewarded foresight, even when it meant raising a man who had criticized a dead rival's strategy. The promotion proved something important about this tier. Failure cost officers their lives, yet having been correct about someone else's mistake could earn a promotion. At the very peak of the political ladder, as documented in the X-Wing Rogue Squadron comics and other Legends reference material, Said Pistage served as Grand Vizier, Palpatine's most senior political advisor. Pistage maintained the day-to-day running of the Empire, while the Emperor focused on Sith matters and grand strategy. He controlled access to the Emperor and oversaw the Imperial Court. After Endor, Pistage briefly held Coruscant before being overthrown by rivals who had spent years waiting for exactly this moment. Every officer at this level drew their standing entirely from Palpatine's personal favor, and the moment Palpatine was gone, it all vanished. At this level, an officer did not serve the Empire, an officer was the Empire, and every one of them owed that power to a single man. The Imperial officer hierarchy was not a ladder designed for the best to rise. It was a cage designed to keep everyone inside it dependent on the man at the top. Palpatine built overlapping commands, encouraged competition between Moffs, placed intelligence agencies above military commanders, and promoted officers based on personal loyalty as much as skill. The result was a military that functioned as long as fear flowed downward from a single source. And when the Emperor died, the fear stopped, and the Empire stopped with it. In the Legends continuity, the post-Endor Empire fractured into warlord states. Thrawn nearly reunited the Remnant through genius, while Asard held Coruscant through terror. But without Palpatine at the center, every rivalry he had encouraged and every overlapping command he had designed collapsed the moment there was no one left at the top. That structure was only one part of how the Galactic Empire maintained control, and the man who sat at the top did not just keep his officers in line. He kept everyone beneath him in check, including his own enforcer. Palpatine deliberately limited Darth Vader's power to ensure that even the most dangerous figure in the galaxy could never challenge him, and the reasons behind that decision reveal the same thinking that this entire system was built on. And for those who wanted the full story of the Emperor himself, from his rise as a senator to his death above Endor, the channel covered the complete history of Palpatine from beginning to end. Both are in the description.